Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Knowledge. Now, we've got a bit of a narrative right now with this Knowledge series, and right now, from last week, we spoke about recovery, but we all know that the most important aspect of recovery is, of course, sleeping. Now, we could talk for hours about sleep, the ways in which you can adapt how to sleep, how much you should sleep, and the science on sleep is, to be honest, it is unbelievably comprehensive, but there's also a lot of new science which is coming in, as well as looking at supplementation and routine. But first and foremost, this guy beside me, Fin McAndrew, he's back again. How are we doing, Fin?
I'm good, thanks, Jimmy. As always, hair's longer as again every week.
That hair's looking a bit tamer this week, so it's all good.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes out for me, Fin, is that I've learned loads of stuff in the last 5 to 6 months, having read a few books and listened to a few podcasts and using different bits of tech, of how important my sleep is. And it also makes a lot of the sensations that I felt when I was a bike rider, when I was doing back-to-back days in racing or training, it now makes an awful lot of sense why I felt rubbish some days and felt great other days. So we're going to try and not get too deep into science. If anyone has got any questions leading on from this, they can obviously feel free to leave them in the comments and we'll try and get all of those answered to you. But ultimately, sleep. Let's break it down in a nutshell. There's 4 cycles of sleep. One of them is when you're awake, which is when you get disturbed. Second one is REM, rapid eye movement. You then got SWS, which is slow wave sleep. And the final one is light sleep. So that kind of sleep where you're kind of conscious and can hear things, but you're still kind of not able to open your eyes. So that's the 4 cycles of sleep. The 2 most important parts of that is the slow wave sleep and the REM sleep. Can you break down why they are the most important parts of that sleep?
Well, in slow wave sleep, that's when we're releasing the majority of our growth hormone. So I think it's something like 95% of growth hormones released in that phase of the sleep. And why that's so important is that allows us to recover. So I think we really need to always go back to the fact that life is stressful, and particularly when you're training hard, you get faster when you recover. So that sleep cycle is absolutely essential in allowing you to improve and get better and keep making advancements in your fitness levels, and also just feeling good on a daily basis and feeling like you've recovered. The next thing with the REM sleep, or the rapid eye movement, that's the cycle of the sleep where you might have slightly more vivid dreams, and you might have slightly sort of different thoughts, and you might remember some part of that sleep. And why that's so important is our body prioritizes REM sleep. So if you miss out on REM sleep, then your body will try and make that back up again. And this is a really interesting thing with sleep, is sometimes people look at it as one entity, and it's not one entity. There's different parts to it. And that's where if somebody misses a few nights sleep, for example, or they've got compromise on their sleep, then the body prioritizes that REM sleep. And that's when you might have those nights where you're quite restless, or you have quite chaotic dreams and things like that. And that's going to then impair your ability to recover.
Yeah, so that's ultimately, you've nailed it right on the head there. The increase in REM sleep is literally the body trying to catch up from sleep deprivation. Now, there are some statistics out there that reckon that when you're in bed at night, you should have roughly 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep per night, which would make up 20 to 25% of your sleep in all. If you can, 1.5 hours, 90 minutes is bang on. With it, slow wave sleep, we spoke about how that's important for the regeneration of our body, and this is something that gets easily missed, and we'll explain that in a minute why it can get missed, just purely from some of our behaviours before we go to our bed. But that again has to make up between 15 to 25% of your sleep as well. We're talking about numbers here and statistics and percentages, but the best way of doing this is there's 2 ways. You can buy a tracker, which could be an Oura Ring, a Whoop band, or there's apps you can buy. There's peripherals you can plug into your iPhone called the iFleet, which can let you know about HRV, and that's another story, HRV. But even if you were just in simple terms, think about routine. You have routines in the morning for getting up, get our clothes on, have brush your teeth, etc., etc. But a lot of people forget that the first thing we do with children is we make a routine for them so that they sleep well. And we tend to negate that and have a lot of ego over, oh, I can operate in 4 hours sleep. Well, you probably can't. And what will happen is you can operate for a small period of time, but you'll very, very quickly fall off a cliff or have an absolutely mental dream 3 days later where your brain is trying to catch up on that. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And I think everyone can operate on adrenaline and cortisol for, a few days, and then everyone gets to that natural break where they get some extra time and they settle down, and that crash that they feel is when that's all hitting you in the face. And some fascinating stuff coming out where it's showing like when people have worked on shift patterns for a long time and they've been quite sleep deprived, or their pattern of sleep's been poor, that can take up to like 2 years to rejuvenate themselves from that. So it can be long lasting as well.
You can dig yourself into a pretty deep hole. And one thing we need to also kind of throw a bit of light on is that the fact that your REM sleep with age, it will slowly decline. But you should always still aim to try and get that roughly 20% of your sleep. But again, hard to measure just by going to sleep and waking up. Your body will send you signals. You'll know if you've got broken sleep. A good thing to hang on to here is how you wake up in the morning and how crazy was your dream. That is some stuff that will give you an idea of what kind of sleeping patterns you're having. But ultimately, a wearable of one of the ones we just mentioned a moment ago, they are actually really, really good. And as I say, I've been using the Whoop band now for 6 to 7 months, and I've noticed I have actually really, really dialed in my sleep and what I do. But this is where the real kind of crunch comes from, Finn. It's what is that routine, and what are the things, first of all, we should avoid. I mean, we've got to think about how sleep works during the day. So there's a thing called sleep pressure, which is ultimately your brain's build up of melatonin. And that basically makes your brain just kind of slow down, and you'll slowly go through that kind of, oh, I really need to go to sleep. What we do is nowadays we drink caffeine too late. So you should probably not drink caffeine roughly 4 to 6 hours before you go to sleep. I've now cut it out at midday, whereas previously I'd be hammering double espressos and caffeine when I was racing at 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, and wondering why next day I felt absolutely in the box. Alcohol is a massive component of having terrible sleep, but the issue we've got to really, really, take a real sharp focus on is that alcohol doesn't actually help you sleep; it sedates you. And when you do take alcohol, especially if you're in a race environment, maybe a multiple day, 1 beer's maybe okay, but you start to see trends over time. And I've noticed that if you do have alcohol at a specific time, 1 or 2 beers or 1 or 2 glasses of wine can actually have a massive effect on my slow wave sleep. So if you're doing multiple day events, drinking every night after that event, even if it's just 1 glass of wine, okay, I understand you want to chill out and relax, but you're potentially taking percentages of time away from your sleep. And the most important part of your sleep, being that slow wave sleep, you're losing that percentage of the human growth hormone your body releases to then make you able to get up next day and repeat. So it's that sort of stuff we really need to think about in simple terms, is that chop back your caffeine consumption if you can, midday, 2 o'clock, 4 to 6 hours before you go to bed. And also alcohol, just try, there's plenty of non-alcoholic versions of stuff out there nowadays, but for the greater good of your sleep and how you actually feel you're operating as a human being, it's probably worth experimenting with, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the alcohol is really, it's something that's slightly controversial with people, because they say, oh, a glass of red wine, it's a Friday night, it relaxes me. And you can see that, but the evidence is it just compromises your next day performance and how you feel so much. So I think if you're really trying to prioritize sleep and do everything you can to put yourself in the best position to sleep as well as possible, then it really is about cutting alcohol. And I always remember one fact that really always resonates with me is when it was, Team Sky would always talk about trying to go to bed as early as they could in the evening, as soon as they could, so that they were potentially getting an hour extra sleep in the evening. And if you added that up over the course of a 3-week tour, there could be, in theory, getting a day's extra sleep.
So think about it. That's the epitome of marginal gain, isn't it? 1 hour over 30 days. You can't argue with that, can you? I mean, that's, obviously the days running into the event as well. You've got to make sure you're not just recovering hard. I mean, race hard, train hard, recover super hard. But we spoke about things that you should avoid. So what are the things and the kind of wee hacks and the sort of sleep hygiene can we get out there to people pretty much in a nutshell? There's a few points that we can look at. There's obviously that natural, your brain's going to naturally start producing that melatonin, increasing that sleep pressure over the day. So there is options in there as well, Finn, to have power naps, but you need to be careful of how much time you're napping. Also, how and when you're doing it in the afternoon, because you can actually then hamper that production of the melatonin, which is trying to put you to sleep.
Yeah, you can get pretty scientific with working out what the optimal time to have a nap is from when you wake up to when you go to bed. In practice, that's not going to necessarily work for everybody, because if you're fortunate enough to be able to get a nap in the afternoon, then that's a pretty good thing. But we're really looking to optimize with a nap is 20 to 30 minutes of a light nap. I think that's really a good time period to be looking at. And we can then look at what we do before that nap as well. So by having some caffeine before we have the nap, that will bring us out of that nap in a better effect, because most people take 30, 45 minutes for caffeine to actually hit them. So even if you're just closing your eyes, most people won't fall asleep with a nap. Like, napping is a skill, but even just lying there with your eyes closed, not thinking about stuff, is incredibly powerful recovery tool, and just refreshes you. And I mean, I aim to have a nap, if I can, between 2 to sort of 3 o'clock for me, because I always try and be in bed by 10 o'clock at night. So if I'm past 3 o'clock, then I think that could, in theory, have an impact on my sleep at night and delay that onset. So I think if it's too early, that will naturally throw out your sleep as well.
Yeah, because
and if you've done a hard session, you could recover with that too.
Yeah, so that's otherwise known as the Nappuccino, or what was the other one you called? What was we called it earlier?
Nespresso.
Espresso, yeah. So ultimately,
I can't coin that.
The thing is with that, that's a really good tool to use if you're doing like a double day. For instance, you've got training in the morning, and then you've got a chain gang or even a race in the evening. You've been out for a nice pedal in the morning. Have that little 10, 15, 20 minute, 30 minute sleep if you can, and you've got that luxury. Have that coffee, lie down, bit of mindfulness, just chill out, put on maybe some white noise, get an eye mask on, really try and disconnect, and you'll wake up feeling absolutely brilliant because the caffeine will have kicked in. But you've also gave yourself that minute to just kind of, zone out of all the madness, and the madness comes in varying levels. Obviously, you've got family and environment, but mobile phones as well. Leave the phone downstairs or leave the phone in the kitchen, unless you like sleeping in your kitchen, obviously, but not many of us do. But really, really try and separate it and really draw a line in the sand with that. And that's really, really important. When we have got through all that part, Finlay, and we're now looking at getting ready for sleep, and that's a very important thing, getting ready to sleep. Not many people set themselves up to, right, this is my routine. Because we said already, we do it with children. We have the dinner, we get the bath run, we read a book. We don't let them drink caffeine or scull some beers and then smash it on a smartphone most of the time. But these are all things that we inherently do, which slows down and potentially stunts that melatonin release, which is our body saying, right, listen, time to chill out, let's get to sleep. But there are other things, if we start putting into practice, give or take, set an alarm on your phone, say 9 o'clock at night, power down, time to start powering down. And over that hour, there are several things that we can do in that hour to get ourselves, which are very, very simple in practice. Everything through, we can talk about having a nice warm shower to reduce your core temperature, all the way through to supplementation. But let's break down a few of those little hacks that people can actually see the benefit of pretty much right away. There's no real build up of this stuff. It's just learning the skills and what works for you. But what have we kind of found, Finn, from your point of view?
One thing I really like to do is I set the alarm on my clock that I'm going to get up at the next morning pretty early on in the evening. And once I get to that point, say 2 hours from going to bed at 8 o'clock, I'll put my phone on Do Not Disturb and put that next to my bed. So I then know that I don't need to look at my phone anymore. So I think that's a really good hack. There is some controversy over sometimes effective blue light at night. The real damage is like looking at something that's activating your brain and making you think. And I think everyone can look at their lives and go, yeah, we're incredibly busy and it can seem like it's out of control. But the reality is we're just doing too much late in the evening and we're thinking about too many things which are too complex when we should be winding down. So it's at that time you really need to take the opportunity to try and switch off, and that's where a phone is a massive source of that and stress. So I think really putting that phone away at that point, and I think it's, I'd like to set my alarm there, because if you don't set the alarm then you get into bed and you look at your phone and then you're setting your alarm and putting it down. So that's one thing I always like to do. And then it's really looking at, well, what are you going to do from then to get the conditions right for going to sleep. So I like personally taking zinc and magnesium, using a magnesium spray. That's been shown to improve the depth of your sleep, and magnesium can also help with cramping. Something which is also very effective is herbal teas, and a lot of experts promote chamomile tea over, they say they're more effective than a sleeping tablet. So just that process of going, right, I'm into a routine, and it's kind of going, I'm going to have, my herbal tea now, I'm going to read my book for 20 minutes. And when I go into my bedroom, I'm going to sleep. And I think it's really then looking at your bedroom as a place that you go to sleep. And that's where there's some really fascinating stuff in terms of the conditions and the lighting and how you actually have that place set up to optimize your sleeping pattern.
One thing,
the
one thing you have there is the fact that your bed is for sleeping in. Your bed's not for doing work in. Your bed's not for doing emails and getting stressed out 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Do that in another room. You need to really have an association with your body and the behavior that you're trying to promote better sleep by making your body aware, when I go to this room, I'm going to sleep. When I lie, because you start associating body postures and different kinds of things like the light, looking at a computer, tapping on it, that all becomes habitual, and you end up associating bed with stress, and nobody wants to be stressed going to sleep, thinking about an email that they should have sent to the boss, or that really important Facebook status they should have put up that everyone's going to care about in 3 weeks' time. So it's that sort of stuff. And to be honest with you, things that I've found that have worked really well for me, you hit on magnesium there. I did a lot of it. I've done a wee bit of experimentation, and there is, depending on your take on this stuff, there are things like in the UK you can't buy melatonin, so there's options to buy something called I think it's 5-HTP, which actually helps your body's activation and release of melatonin and serotonin, which they can only be good things. Make you feel happy, make you feel chilled out, definitely good for your mood, especially if you are stressed. Another thing that I've actually started trying this week is the SIS have brought out this new thing called Sleep Plus, which has got a combination of 3 or 4 different ingredients. Got tryptophan in it, which is an amino acid, which again does the same thing as 5-HTP. It's got quite a decent dosage of magnesium in there. So they're probably looking at anywhere between 300 to 450 milligrams of magnesium. And it's also got cherry tart in it as well. So you mix that in the hot water, drink it 30 minutes to an hour before you go to bed, and I'm quite impressed with it, actually. And it's showing now that more and more companies like your SIS, likes of HealthSpan, who I recommend as one of the best, best vitamin and supplement companies out there. Super clean, sports trusted. There's plenty of professional teams and professional athletes that use those products, so they're perfectly fine. They do a 5-HTP, and there's more and more stuff now. If you go on these websites, there are literally so many more sleep aids and things to help you actually power down. But you also mentioned sleeping tablets a bit earlier as well, Finn. They are literally a bandage on a bullet hole. They ain't going to fix your sleep. You're going to miss waves of sleep. You're going to have disturbed sleep. And the issue with that is that there's a lot of anxiety that gets built around about that sort of stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, really, sleeping tablets will stop working after about 10 days of using them. So people that are using them for 3-4 years, really, it's doing absolutely nothing. It's purely a placebo effect. There's something in that too. That it's interesting, you're talking about the sort of, that product that you're taking from SIS, and it's, even if that isn't doing anything, it's setting a routine. But there is some really good evidence behind that stuff, and it's a natural way to help promote sleep. And these things really are based on some good evidence, whereas taking a sleeping tablet is just not solving the problem. And yeah, it's really kind of trying to think outside the box with that and looking at a different way. I think one really interesting topic which always gets brought up to me is, my sleep's been disturbed by the person I'm sleeping with as well. And I don't know if you find this too, Jimmy, but me and my girlfriend frequently argue about the temperature of the bedroom, and you know what that should be. Are you the same?
Well, I run hot, and I'm not being big-headed here, but I run hot all the time. I sweat, salty. I pretty much grew up in a house in Glasgow where I spent the majority of my days in shorts or pants. So, it's for me, the general rule of thumb that they reckon is 20 degrees maximum. And there'll be some people struggling with that tonight in Scotland because it's like 25 degrees outside. And they'll feel like, oh my God, it is so hot. But there are things, again, that we can do to help regulate that. So your body has to actually reduce its core temperature by about 1 degree to then add to that sleep pressure with that melatonin to actually make you go to sleep, which is why when you're lying in bed and you're all cuddled in, you're like, oh man, I'm not really feeling that cut. And you throw the covers off, and then you maybe take your t-shirt off or whatever, your nightie or whatever it is, and suddenly you're out. Like you got one more move, and then I'm sleeping, and you're away. So things like that, again, using the shower before you go to bed helps your body cool down. Trying to be careful with the temperature of the room, because we know, you can probably lead on this, the difference between men and women when they're in bed.
Yeah. So what's very interesting is that males typically like the environment to be a bit cooler to sleep in, and females like it to be a little bit warmer. And so if maybe that gives some clarity to some people out there who have some debates on what it should be, but there's some hacks to that where you can, simply, like, if somebody likes it to have warmer, have like a double duvet or have a blanket on that side of the bed, because there isn't actually an optimum and people are different. And that's the thing with sleep, is there's no one rule. It's the same as everything. We like different things. The other thing with that environment is that people will be affected by light in a different way. So I was talking earlier about a really interesting piece of evidence showing that a light being shined on somebody's body when they were fast asleep would stimulate a rise in cortisol in their body, which is fascinating. So that was trying to mimic like a clock light or a standby light on a television. So really you want your room as dark as possible. And like when I go away traveling, I always take duct tape with me, so I can duct tape over everything in a room that's got a light in it, because it just drives me crazy. So I think that's where like a sleep mask could be really effective. And that's one thing that's changed my sleeping is good earplugs. I've discovered a new company which I work with, which that work with my ears, where they don't, because I sleep on my side, so I have the pressure like that, but they don't fall out, and I'm just not waking up as much because I can't hear the noise. So I think silence is a really interesting thing as well, especially if you live with somebody who's waking up.
So that's myself as well. I actually spent about 20 quid on Amazon. I got a face mask, I'm the kind of person who couldn't wear a face mask on a plane because I felt they were quite. I didn't quite like it. But the one I've got, it's got like little circular pillows like that go over your eyes, and then the actual black mask goes over the top of it. They attach via Velcro. I think it's called the hominin. I think it's called, or homini. That's great. And I've also got earplugs, which are actually, they're almost like silicone, and you heat them up in your fingers, and it's a little ball. They're squishy, and you basically put it in your ear. It's almost like plasticine, and they pop in your ears, and they're actually really, really comfy, and you cannot hear a thing whatsoever. So again, it's depriving the senses when you get to sleep. And if you can do just that few things, if you can get used to wearing an eye mask, maybe listen to some sort of white noise, or pink noise is quite a big thing as well now. You can find all that online dead easy. Well, if you get Spotify, if you're on iTunes, you can find that for free. It's all on there. Also, earplugs, eye mask, having a shower before your bed. That's you already doing 4 things for free.
Absolutely. It's just, and it's so simple, and all these little things, they start adding up, and it starts becoming part of a routine, and increases your chance of prioritizing it. And I think even like, the hot weather that we're experiencing at the moment, that's when a cold shower can be very effective as well. Just, actually, like, even just putting some cold water on the back of your neck. You don't need to get in the shower. I think the worst thing you can do is if you're lying in bed and for some reason you're not quite falling to sleep, don't stay in bed and try and fall to sleep, because there's something not right. So actually, and then that creates that association with that bed. So it's just get up, round for 5 minutes, put some cold water on your neck or around the back of your ears, even under your armpit. It sounds really strange, but these areas are sensitive to that. And then go back to bed. And you probably find that even just little routines like that, little hacks like that, can help promote that onset.
Cool. So well, I think we'll try and round it up, because I want to keep this one quite precise. As we said in our chat earlier before we started recording, is that we don't literally want to put people to sleep by talking about sleep. But if we can kind of pull it in, Finn, I'll bring a few things that I've used and I know that work. Have a routine. Set an alarm on your phone, a couple hours before you would usually go to bed, 8 o'clock or whatever. Think about getting ready to bed. Start powering down. Try and get away from the phone. Try and finish up your work as soon as you can. So that 1 hour before you actually go to bed, so say 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, you're actually starting to bring all of these things into play. And that is a combination of having a warm shower to help bring your body temperature down, thinking about the temperature of your room, listening to some white noise, some pink noise potentially, whatever you fancy. And that's kind of like washing machine in the background, or a TV that's not quite tuned in. Eye mask. And then when you actually do fall asleep, or you're close to fall asleep, earplugs. They're kind of my very, very simple tips for literally helping you get that routine. And those 4 or 5 things you just said there, again, they're free. You don't need to buy anything. Well, maybe an eye mask, maybe some earplugs, but they're a worthwhile investment. You don't need to spend thousands of pounds on stuff here. It's like literally 20 quid, and you'll never regret spending that money. What about yourself?
Yeah, I agree totally with that. And really, the only other thing that I do is I prioritize my sleep like a training session, and I look ahead at the week at when I'm going to be training, and I try and plan my eating and my training to help facilitate that routine. Because at the end of the day, if somebody does a training session at 7 o'clock, 7:30, and they're finished at 8:30, and then they have tea, and then they're going to try and go to bed at 10 o'clock, chances are you're not going to fall asleep there, because you've just not put your body in. Because we know that exercising late will prevent you sleeping for a certain amount of time in those situations. So I think we all train hard, and quite a common bit of feedback from people is, can I do more? Well, look at your training. Well, could I sleep more? Because actually sometimes doing a little less training and sleeping better will mean that you get more from that training stimulus. You'll absorb it better, and then you'll get faster. So people often look at the answer, what can I do more of with the training, when it's actually, what can you do better around that training? And that's where really prioritizing that sleep time and that routine, and being quite strict. Somebody asks you to do something late at night and you think it's going to stop you from going to sleep, don't do it. So I think it's really just putting sleep first is my main bit of advice to people.
What I will do is in the description, I'll find the things that I've used, and if you want to ping me over anything that you've kind of used, like whether it's a supplement or whatever, but I will put in things like the earplugs that I use, the mask that I've got, some of the stuff that I've tried, like a link to the SIS thing, as well as the other kind of like magnesium, etc. But there's also some really good resources out there, and one book that absolutely blew my mind is in equal measures phenomenal and frightening at the same time, is a book by a guy called Matt Walker, and it's called Why We Sleep. And if you read that, it'll just totally open up your eyes to just the secret and how much you can unlock your potential as an athlete, and even every day as just a better functioning human being from a mood point of view. Read that book or get it on audiobook. It is absolutely brilliant. And another thing that I listen to pretty much week in, week out, because I'm in that Whoop ecosystem, their podcast, the Whoop podcast, you can get on Spotify, SoundCloud, and iTunes, FOC. They really dig into an awful lot. And also their website, whoop.com, they've got a thing called The Locker, and there's loads of resources on there, lots of white paper information about the product, how ultimately it's the best product out there for measuring sleep and HRV, etc., etc. And the connection between that and strain in your life, and how some days you can do a little less but feel worse. So there's loads of information out there, and trying not to complicate the conversation, have a look on their website, whoop.com, WHOOP. Have a look at that. Have a little listen to Matt Walker's book. You'll find so many golden nuggets information in there, which you can pretty much take forward now instantly and start applying. But that's kind of my final words on it. Anything else you kind of say, mate?
No, I think we've hopefully everyone realises a little, sort of appreciates it a bit more and just thinks about their sleep better, and just not maybe take it for granted that it's just going to happen. And there is stuff you can do in your control to make it better. Absolutely.
So we'll link all the stuff and any products that we spoke about today. We've got no affiliation with any of this stuff. We're just biohacking ourselves and experimenting with this. But again, thanks again for tuning in. Finlay, thank you for your time once again on this very hot and muggy Thursday evening. And we look forward to any questions and any comments you guys may have, and we'll do our best to get back to you. So thanks once again for joining into our Friday edition, What's Your Meta's YouTube channel of The Knowledge. And we'll see you again next week for more knowledge. Finn, take care, pal. I'll see you next week.
See you next week, Jimmy. Cheers.